It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. I am looking forward to talk with my guest today. Joining me is Lars Nilsson, VP of Global Inside Sales at Cloudera, and a pioneer in the development of the account-based sales development model. Lars, welcome to Accelerate.
Thanks, Andy. I appreciate it. Took me a while to get here, but I'm happy we've connected.
Yeah, likewise. So take a minute, maybe introduce yourself, tell you how you got your start in sales.
Yeah, so I got my start in sales exactly 29 years ago.
29, okay.
29. I did on-campus interviews at the University of California at Santa Barbara, and I interviewed for this kind of an entry-level sales position with both IBM and Xerox. And I ended up taking the position with Xerox because at the time they had arguably the best sales training organization or program on the planet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was told by a mentor to go get trained how to sell. So I sold copiers for the first 5 years of my career.
Copiers? Yeah, I know lots of people have started with Xerox.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable opportunity to learn how to present, to negotiate, to handle objections, to close, all the kind of classroom things that companies back then invested time with their kind of new hires out of college.
Yeah. No, I got my start in a very similar program. So you did copiers for 5 years. Then how did you start getting your way into the Valley and startups and so on?
Yeah, I left Xerox for a Swedish biotech firm, still selling hardware. I was selling titanium dental implants to oral surgeons, but that got me my move up to the Valley up here in the San Francisco area. And it was in the mid-'90s, and it was the bubble was just taking off. And Netscape had gone public 3 years earlier. And I had some friends that said, Lars, you have the kind of disposition and the attitude and the hyperness to love this space. And they were right. My first entry into the Valley was a venture-backed company called Portal Software, and I joined them in 1997.
So you worked for a Swedish company. Now I read somewhere, you speak Swedish though, right?
I do. My parents emigrated when I was very young, but I spent 18 summers in Sweden. So it very much is a big part of my culture and background, and it was my first language. So I do speak it fluently, and I still go back every year for at least a week.
Wow. Yeah, one of my favorite places. I spent a lot of time in Stockholm on business, and pretty city. Very pretty city.
No doubt.
Yeah, especially if you're there in the summer as opposed to the winter.
I just got back 2 weeks ago from having spent midsummer there, so I can second that.
Yeah. One of my first experiences actually was international business experiences was in Sweden. I tell the story about walking into my first meeting the president of this company. It was actually the national telephone company, and just as I was walking in the building, first international business meeting, I get hit by pigeons walking in the door to this meeting, all over my head and my shoulders. And it's like, welcome to Stockholm.
Oh, there you go, man.
But it was it was just a couple weeks shy of the longest day of the year. So, all right, so let's get into this topic about account-based sales development, because it's something that I think is familiar to people that work with tech companies. We have a fairly broad audience here, people that maybe sell to the enterprise but really aren't familiar with the concept. So maybe you could define, first of all, what it means.
Yeah, so the kind of two key parts of that are account-based and sales development. And I'll start with sales development because it's a role that I started for this company, Portal Software, about 20 years ago. when my manager, who was managing outside enterprise class sales, turned to me and said, Lars, I don't want my reps generating appointments. I don't want them cold calling, and I don't want them following up on inbound leads. I want you to build me an organization that does that for my guys. I want my guys in the field selling, negotiating, and closing. I don't want them wasting time, in his words, cold calling and following up on all these, thousands upon thousands of inbound marketing qualified leads.
Right.
So that's what I did. So a sales development rep is a very formal and a very mature role today. And if you have a sales development organization, for the most part, it means that you have a group dedicated of selling professionals that are setting up appointments. So they don't retire quota, and they don't carry quota to close anything other than an appointment for someone that understands the technology that you're about to be selling to them. And it's a handoff of a company that is interested and knows about your technology to a selling professional.
All right. So an inside salesperson, or let's say inside sales development rep, to what could be an inside account rep or a field rep.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly right. And then the other part is the account-based. And again, before the notion of account-based, which probably became more, really popular a year or two ago on the marketing side, marketing and sales were really trying to prospect to anyone and everyone that they thought could be interested. And certainly there were marketing organizations that were doing programs and doing events to try to, get eyeballs and interest into the company. But the account-based approach today is very formulaic, right? If you as the company selling a solution or a product understands the exact makeup and the type of company that should be interested in your products, then go ahead and target them very specifically. Target the procurers, the influencers, the decision makers for that technology with a relevant message that talks to the use cases that your solution can help them solve. Talk about the pain points. And what's amazing today is that, 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was very difficult to prospect into individual contributors or managers or directors, even VPs. They weren't found in any relevant databases. You really could only target a C-level executive that you could find in these curated databases like Hoover's
right.
and OneSource. But today with LinkedIn and Data.com and NetProspect, you can legitimately pinpoint the role and the title that hopefully you understand makes these decisions for a targeted company. Send them the message in hopes that you're targeting your message at the right person at a company that you believe should understand what you're doing and also that you're interested to talk to.
Right. Well, and one of the things that with the account-based focus is what you're hoping is you get away from is this pure sort of focus that we see with a lot of inside sales companies or inside sales teams on sort of quantity versus quality. And it seems like the account-based sales development model really puts more of the focus on the quality.
Yeah, there's no doubt. At Cloudera, we're a Hadoop distribution vendor, and we sell big data solutions to companies, to larger enterprises that have a big data problem or a hell of a lot of data. And we've closed enough business, enough logos to understand in a certain industry, in a certain size company, these are the people that we have sold to So we know their roles, we know their titles. So if we have solved big data problems for, let's say, a financial services oriented company above 10 billion in revenues, then it would seem likely that if we found those like roles and titles in a company we haven't sold to, that we can go scrape those or curate those out of a contact relevant database where we can get their phone numbers and their email addresses readily available, that we can send very specific messages and hope to solve the problems that they may have as well. So we're no longer kind of spraying and praying a message out there to random companies, to every employee or a large group of people inside that. We're sending the message to a group of individuals at one company. So I wouldn't at all call it spamming a bunch of people at one company. I would call it, we are taking a business relevant message and hoping that, anywhere from 10 to 50 people that might own solving that problem at that company. And we believe that if we send them a relevant message, they're going to open the email, they're going to look at it, read it, and we hope that they'll respond, or at least click through on a link that is directing them maybe to some metrics, some ROI metrics, or some relevant research about how our technology has solved a problem for another like company.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's, for people that listen to this, because some of the feedback you hear about the account-based model is that, hey, that's really nothing new, right? I mean, if you've been selling into a large enterprise, you talked about, hey, you have to identify, if you've sold into a few of those accounts, you have to identify the relevant roles and influencers and so on. But one of the real differences is, I think for people to really understand, is that now given the technology that's available, given the resources, you said the database is available, you can certainly accelerate that process in a much more targeted way than you could before. Whereas before, it could be, you make a phone call, you open a door, you get a reference to somebody, put another phone call in, and so on. You have to do it very methodically, but very slowly, build up those list of contacts.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And certainly when I got my start at Xerox, that's exactly what I was doing. But I was a sales rep, and I was doing it as a one-off basis. And I'll go back to the first part of this, which is the sales development. And if you have this role, at Cloudera, I can have one SDR execute 2 to 3 of these campaigns a week. So over a period of a month or two, and we've got close to 60 SDRs, we can launch 1 to 200 outbound targeted campaigns a week into 100 or more accounts.
All right. Well, let's talk about what one of those campaigns looks like. So it sort of starts with, you put together this consolidated view of an account, I guess, to start with. You know who these people are. You've either through LinkedIn or Navigator or Net Prospects or Day.com or someplace, you've identified who those contacts are within that account that are likely to, as you said, to have the pain point associated with your solution.
That's exactly right. And there are a number of places you can go, including by looking at your own CRM and understanding how many of those contacts have already opted in from previous campaigns that you may have done. But what we're finding is that where we may have 10 or 20 opt-in contacts already in our CRM at Cloudera, when we're going into LinkedIn or Data.com, we're finding almost 10x the number of targeted individuals that have not opted in, but that are generally available in a database like LinkedIn, which is, sales professionals all over the world are using that to target messaging to. And so we're just improving upon where our marketing team has perhaps garnered a handful of names here or there over a handful of years. We're augmenting that with several more extremely relevant titles and roles that aren't in there, and adding that to this campaign, this outbound kind of email drip sequence campaign that we're then going to put together. And I think that's where some of the other art comes from is how many emails you decide to put together in one of these outbound campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you sequence them out, and what is the cadence? Do you do it? We don't do it by the hour or by the week, but we drip them out somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5 days after each other.
And so, talk about the sequence you're going to use. We'll talk about the tools you use to do that. But before you get to that, the question I had about once you got your consolidated view of your account, let's say for Cloudera, on average, for one of your ideal client prospects, how many contacts are you reaching out to within a single account?
So the bigger the account, the more relevant titles and roles that we have to go after. I'll give an example. If you're going after a very large, $100 billion plus financial institution that is global, that has divisions and departments all over the world, you might be talking up to, hundreds of people that have titles, relevant roles
Sure.
and titles. And as you go down into, let's say, mid-market, there may only be 5 or 10 people. So there's a lot of people that ask me, what's the ideal size account? For us, it's companies above $1 billion,
Mm-hmm.
$1 billion in revenue. That for us tells us that they have enough employees, they have enough data, they have enough databases, processes where wrangling that data and providing a solution for it is probably something that they're looking at.
Right.
And there's only 7,000 of those, maybe 10 in the world. So it's a very manageable number for us. It's not hundreds of thousands or millions of entities. It's, 5 to 10,000.
Yeah, well, I spent a good chunk of my career selling to a market that had 500 accounts in it, so worldwide. So, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So, but I think the lesson for people listening to this is that if you do the right work, the right pre-work, that there's probably a deeper level or a higher number of people involved that have some sort of influence that you can identify beforehand, that you want to make sure you don't short circuit or shortcut that process.
And we're constantly revising the level. Sometimes we will go down to individual contributor. I'll give an example. In some accounts where we don't find maybe more than 25 relevant titles, we might do a search, a keyword search, so that if someone has Hadoop engineer anywhere in their LinkedIn profile,
Mm-hmm.
we might add that to the list of people that we do an outbound campaign to, believing that if someone at that company has put Hadoop engineer in their LinkedIn profile, they're going to know, they're not only going to know likely who Cloudera is as a company, but they're going to know about our technology.
Right. And just for people listening, Hadoop is an open source software that's forms sort of the basis of your solution.
Correct. Yes. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
That's correct. Yes.
Just clarifying. Okay. So your sequence then, or your cadence that you put together, you said about 2.5 days apart, you found works best for you. So what's sort of how many contacts or how many, touch points do you put into your cadence?
Yeah. So we might load into the solution we use called Outreach anywhere from 25, 50 on the low end up to 2 to 250 on the high end. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to put together a 3 email sequence that will execute over a 5 to 7 day period, with the first email going out to let's say it's 100 individuals.
Right.
It's going to go out to all 100 at the same time. And the key for the very first one is to have a very relevant subject line. And also to have what we call a hook. The very first sentence has to be something that if and when they read it, they're right. If the subject allows them to open the email and the first sentence cues them to finish the email, then The hope is that we'll get a reply or we'll get a forward. And the more relevant you can get with your subject, and the more kind of relevant you can get with your hook or your first sentence, we see that the open rates and the reply rates go up as a result.
So what sort of open rates and reply rates do you typically find on your campaigns?
So I would say that before we set up these campaigns this way, and again, a lot of companies use marketing automation, whether it's Eloqua or Marketo or Pardot. Their marketing organization uses the technology to do nurture emails to large groups of lead objects, lead names,
right,
with general messaging. We were finding an open rate of between 5 and 8% when we did those, and an email open rate of 5 to 8%, and we were finding reply rates 2 to 3%.
So sort of typical marketing open rates and reply rates, right?
Correct. And now that we are focusing on one account, but anywhere from 50 to 250 people, we are finding open rates range anywhere from 25 on the very low end up to 80% on the high end, and reply rates 10% on the low end up to 45% on the high end.
Wow. So what's the process used internally then to come up with the messaging for that account? Who's involved with that process? Because this is not something, you're just not cut and pasting from previous ones. You're creating a custom message, it sounds like.
We are. So we have a role here at Cloudera called a subject matter expert, and we have 6 of them. And there's one for each of our kind of target verticals: financial services, healthcare, retail, manufacturing. And those subject matter experts have spent 20 to 30 years in those verticals. They understand our use cases and how we're solving problems in those verticals, but they also know how to kind of walk and talk the language of those verticals. So they are the ones that are helping us put together our messaging, which is very clean, very crisp, and very short. And so we use words and the language so that if we're going into kind of a management or mid-management layer and talking about use cases, they're the ones who are writing the copy for us. So when we represent 3 bullet points of how we've solved a big data problem at, let's say, a large international airline, they're talking about how we have solved that problem for other airlines, but using very specific language that someone in that industry would understand.
Right.
And so when the people that we're sending to are reading it, they believe it. Because so my SDRs, who many of which are 0 or 1 or 2 years out of college, they don't talk that language yet.
Right.
But the messages that they're sending read like they're coming from someone that does.
And so when they reach out to do their follow-up, I presume they're going to follow up phone calls at some point when somebody replies, right, to set up the meeting. It's not done through email necessarily.
Well, what happens a lot of the times, the first thing that an SDR does is they follow up on all the replies. And the replies are typically someone directly responding, because the emails are coming from the SDRs themselves. And so the replies for, hey, listen, I really appreciate you sending this. Makes sense to me. I'd like for you to set up an appointment with my team leader or my manager. Or it could have been a forward that got to someone above or below that person where they're requesting a follow-up. So in a lot of cases, the SDR is quarterbacking a request that comes directly from a reply. As we go through the replies, after each of the sequence has gone out, what we'll end up doing then is making outreach by phone to the people that opened the email but did not reply, hoping that they'll understand perhaps the reason why we're calling 1, 2, or 3 days later, and we'll certainly reference the email that we know they opened and maybe read through part of.
And so if you don't get a reply, do do that before the 2.5 days go by and the second email goes out, or do you wait till the end of the campaign?
We will typically wait for the end of the campaign. The technology we use has intelligence so that if someone opens and replies to the first email, the second email will not go out.
To them, right. And do you then integrate with your marketing system as well to make sure that you're not sending drip messages to these people as well at the same time?
Yes. When and again, the people that we have in our own database, if they were a lead object, we automatically convert them into an account contact before we do this campaign. So they'll no longer be left as a lead object for our marketing automation system to drip anything out to. And that's another technology, an auto conversion or a mass conversion technology. So an SDR, and I'll just give you, let's take Pepsi, for instance. If we're going to do an outbound ABSD campaign to Pepsi, we will look at our CRM and the account will already be set up because it's a strategic account. They may have 10 current contact objects in there. Mm-hmm. But another 25 lead objects that have never been converted over. We'll first mass convert all of those over so that we create a single view of all of the opt-in contacts against that target account.
And so, again, for people listening, a lead object is just a lead, we'll call it. So somebody that's a lead but not a contact.
Correct. But in the way we work at Cloudera, a lead object that comes from Pepsi should have been converted over against the account by an SDR at some point. But I think any operator will understand that it often happens that whether those leads came in before the SDR operation was set up or even after, to expect the process, operation, and SDR to convert everything that comes in against an existing account. That's a very difficult and complicated process. So we've put automation in there and we've put all of our target accounts. So Pepsi would be in our auto conversion library. So if a lead tomorrow would come in from Pepsi, our system would automatically convert it and it would go from a lead object into a contact against that account.
Got it.
I don't know if that makes sense. And that makes things a lot cleaner. And then both the SDR and the covering target account rep, they get an alert from the system that we have a new inbound inquiry. The fact that we auto-convert it makes things a lot cleaner on our end. And then we don't have orphaned lead objects where they end up in a marketing automation system and they get dripped out these, watered down, generalized, I don't want to say watered down, but more general messages.
just in case your marketing department's listening, right?
You got me. Thanks for that. So
you use a tool like Lean Data or something to do your mass conversion?
That's exactly the tool we use.
Okay. All right. So it's so a couple questions that sort of fall out of this is, so your SDRs that are setting up the appointments and so on, they don't get involved with qualification at all. If they've got a reply, somebody said we're interested, they're just there to set that meeting.
As a part of the qualification and setting up the meeting, they certainly, these are our targeted accounts, our highest, right? So in a sense, just getting someone to want to talk to us makes it qualified. But while the kimono is open, they'll certainly ask as many of the questions that we want to prep our covering sales reps as they can. But really, it's to set that appointment so the account executive can make whether it's their first, second, or third touch point into the account. So by definition, these accounts are already pre-qualified because they're our highest, most strategic accounts.
And so what's their career path look like for your sales development reps?
So that's something that we've also spent time doing. The gap from SDR to outside enterprise account executive is too wide. And so we've created two other roles that allow an SDR, after they've spent somewhere between 1 and 2 years to grow into something what's called a renewal sales rep. And that is an overlay organization that allows our SDRs to grow into an overlay quota-carrying role where they're aligned to an account executive. And now they're responsible for not only guiding the renewal in, but also trying to find upsell and expansion opportunities.
So this is, sometimes you see this in customer success organizations now.
Yes, but at the same time, they're not necessarily a post-sales organization where they're monitored on customer sat and implementation.
Sure. They have a revenue target.
Yeah, they're more making sure that the almighty renewal happens a year later, and that the process of renewing starts 6 months before the renewal. So we know the right people, we know if we have a happy customer, and there's a lot of, and so yes, there are a lot of CSM-like activities that they do, but they're really focused on making sure the renewal is guided properly, and that if there are expansion opportunities of any type, that we bring those to the field. From there, if they do well, between 1 and 2 years, they can move into what's called a corporate account manager, and that is a fully quoted, retire quota, but a headquarter-based inside sales rep that covers what our sales and medium-sized business, which is companies below $1 billion.
Got it.
And from there, if they do well, they can make it into the field as an account executive at Cloudera.
And have you had people do the whole transition, all 4 steps, or?
We have. If everything works the way it's supposed to, it's about a 4.5 to 5 year process. But because Cloudera has grown massively in the last 3 years, we have found SDRs in the role of a renewal rep inside of a year, and a renewal rep into a corporate account sales manager role inside of a year, and out into the field inside of a year. And then we've done that 6 times now.
Like it. Great. Yeah, because obviously, for this program, I talked to a lot of CEOs, founders, sales leaders, and SaaS companies, and so on. And a lot of times, you ask the question about career path, and you get sort of blank stare.
Yeah, I mean, again, SDRs are worth their weight in gold at fast-growing technology companies, and I wholeheartedly believe that people coming out of university today, going into an SDR role at a venture-backed technology software company, the intelligence, the things that they've been multitasking since they were in high school, I mean, they're able to do so many different things. And I sometimes joke about, when I take outreach and I combine it with LinkedIn Navigator and I combine it with Lean Data and Salesforce.com or CRM, it's like this perfect video game that allows them to combine all these really cool technologies, and I give them a playbook and I put a series of processes together in a best practice, and we coin it account-based sales development, and they're able to generate, legitimate pipeline, legitimate demand for a company like Cloudera in our most coveted accounts. So we were scaling so fast and losing SDRs here in the San Francisco Bay Area to other companies. So I decided to pick up, and I began hiring everyone out of we set up an office in Austin, Texas. And now we are hiring these professionals in the Austin market, and in North America, our operation for SDR, renewals, corporate inside sales is all in Austin.
Got it. Which speaks to why you were in Austin last time we spoke.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Makes perfect sense now. And so we're going to move to the last segment of the show where I've got some standard questions I ask all my guests. And the first one, Lars, is a hypothetical scenario. And in this scenario, this may seem like true life to you. You've just been hired as VP of sales by a company whose sales have stalled out. And the CEO is anxious to get some sort of spark back into the sales organization, get them turned around back on track. So question for you is, what 2 things would you do your first week on the job that could have the biggest impact?
Well, as a sales operator for 2 decades and an inside sales operator for 2 decades, the first thing I would do is run a series of reports out of Salesforce.com just to understand what the existing sales team or sales organization has been doing. Are the activities represented in a CRM? I think adoption of CRM is probably one of the most important things for any CEO or executive team to understand, because if they don't know what the sales team is doing, if they don't know if they're having meetings, having phone calls, whether they're face-to-face or online, they may not understand and have the answer to why are we not selling. And so it may just be as easy as understanding that, of the 10 people we have on the team, 9 of them haven't been really trained properly, enabled properly, and they don't really know how to sell. They don't have the right message.
Right. Don't have the playbook in place.
Yeah. So do I have the right people doing the right things? Yes or no? And so anyway, I think, and if I find out that I don't have, I can't reverse engineer how we've been successful in the past, then, we may have to do a restart.
Right.
But understanding, and again, I think the other thing is, what I would do is I would go into and call those customers that we've done good deals with, and then I would ask them. I would call the person, whether it was a year, 2 or 3, that has been a customer of ours, and I would ask them, why did you buy from us? What was it? At what point in the sales cycle, 6 months ago, a year ago, did the light bulb go off for you that we were the right choice? I would also understand whether or not, we were competing against anyone. What were the drivers for the deal?
Sure.
So those are the first 2 things I would do. I think existing customers will guide you exactly to why they bought, and therein lies a bunch of silver bullets to how you can then backtrack into helping new reps that are onboarding understand why your customers are buying from you versus your competitors, or buying you versus doing it manually, or however they did it in the past.
Yeah, not making a change, right? Okay, good answer. So, got some rapid fire questions for you. You can give me one-word answers, or you can elaborate if you wish. The first one is, when you personally, Lars, are out selling, what's your most powerful sales attribute?
Telling stories. And I say this, and I'm going to date myself here, but there's a line in a movie called Stripes where Bill Murray.
I love that movie.
Bill Murray goes in and says, "It's not the uniform you wear; it's the stories you tell." Lee Harvey, you are a madman when you stole that cow, and you and your friends try to make it with that cow. I want to party with you, cowboy. And I think relating to your prospects, how other companies just got mad value, or averted losses, or got gain, or made money, or whatever it was, you have to be able to tell that story. And I think that's where a lot of value is transferred.
Okay, great. So who's your sales role model?
I have, several. I would say that I have 2. Their names are Kevin Mosier and Tom Riley. They're sales leaders. They were individual contributors. They were sales managers. And then they became sales leaders. And Tom Riley today is the CEO of the company I work for. I see him today having individual conversations with sales reps, with prospects, with customers, and he cares. And so when I listen to him talk about not just how Cloudera can solve the problem, but how you, the individual, can bring that story He's just really kind of inspirational. And so he's a guy that I try to emulate, not just on the leadership and management front, but also on the individual contributor front.
Okay. So what's one book you'd recommend every salesperson read?
So I always botched how you pronounce his name, but the book is called The Greatest Salesman in the World.
Oh, Ogmandino, I believe, right?
Ogmandino.
Right.
And I read that book every couple of years, and I would definitely recommend that to any new, existing, or older rep, leader, or manager.
Okay, great recommendation. So last question for you. What music's on your playlist these days?
Elton John and Simon and Garfunkel. I'm a kind of a folk rock guy. I play the guitar, and I'm trying to learn how to play the piano. And I keep going back to those two artists. Okay,
great. Well, good. Well, Lars, thanks for being on the show. Tell folks how they can find out more about Cloudera or to get in contact with you.
Well, God, if you go to our website, cloudera.com, we've engineered it so that at any level, if you want to contact us, you can hit us up. It'll go to one of my SDRs around the globe. And if they don't get back to you within minutes or hours, then let me know, because that's how we've set up the operation.
Perfect. I love that. As somebody who wrote a book called Zero Time Selling, that's exactly what you want to hear. So, Lars, again, thanks. And remember, friends, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And an easy way to do that is to make this podcast Accelerate a part of your daily routine, listening on your commute, in the gym, or as part of your morning sales meeting. That way you won't miss any of my conversations with top business experts like my guest today, Lars Nilsson, who shared his expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining me. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.